This little video is going to take you through the next element of paper 3, the modern depth study on Weimar and Nazi Germany from 1918 to 39. Now, if we have a look, this will be question 3C. This particular question follows on from question 3B, where you've already stated how the interpretations are different in their viewpoints, which was also worth 4 marks, and this, as an extension to that, is also worth 4 marks. But the question note here requires you to suggest one reason why interpretations 1 and 2 give different views about the reasons for the growth and support for the Nazi Party. So that will be the stem of the question that you will have tackled in 3B, the same type of stem, and now you just need to give a reason for that. So the suggested structure here is, all you need is a paragraph. You'll see the lines in the exam paper. You're going to give the same reason every time. It's a suggest one reason, but we are teaching you to give the same reason every time, because otherwise it can be overcomplicated, this question, because there's a multitude of reasons that could possibly explain why historians have different views about certain historical topics and subjects. But the easiest thing is to focus upon the technique that we're going to show you in this presentation. The fact that it says you may use sources B and C to help you explain your answer clearly suggests that the exam board are going to match up sources to those interpretations. Otherwise, they wouldn't put that in the question, because it would just confuse people. So the idea is to just match the correct source to the interpretation and then use the details from the sources to help you explain. Okay, if we have a look at the interpretations again, so you all of it, if you've seen the video for a question 3B, how are the interpretations different, you'll be familiar with these interpretations by now, so I won't spend the time going through them. Obviously, we can see that interpretation 1 is emphasising the role of Hitler alongside kind of the use of propaganda to win over the support of the German people, whereas interpretation 2 is looking at external events relating to that, as you've explored with the previous question. So that source B is linked to interpretation 2. We're talking about the impact of the depression and unemployment. There we go. So that's interpretation is making reference to the powerful speaking abilities of Hitler. The key then is matching up the sources correctly. So you're going back to these sources now. Remember, you will have looked at these sources when you've done the utility question. So don't get worried about time and thinking, oh, now I've got to look through the sources and analyse them critically. You'll have done that bit already for question 3A. So the key here is just familiarising yourself back again with the sources and just matching them up. So as you can see, source B, we've got a photograph here showing people queuing up for their employment benefits. Well, looking back at those interpretations, it's quite obvious, clearly matches up with source B. Looking at source C, it refers to here this carried away on a wave of enthusiasm by the speech. Well, it's referring to the speech that's made by Hitler. Hitler persuaded us that Germany could recover from all of its problems. And then the sight and discipline of the times, the impression of energy in an atmosphere of hopelessness seems to have won her over to the Nazis as well. So it's quite obvious that source C. So to match them up, I just need to go into my answer. This will be your first sentence to this question in the exam paper. For question 3C, you must write, the interpretations differ because they may give weight to different sources. Now note that we're not making the assumption here that they do give weight. It's just that the fact that they may, we can never assume that historians have used those sources, but there's a high probability they've used sources similar to those to arrive at that judgment of whatever interpretation 1 or 2 actually are. So just remember that exact statement going into that exam. Learn it off by heart, because that is going to be your line. The interpretations differ because they may give weight to different sources. And now I'm just going to back that up with a mention of the fact that, for example, it may be likely that interpretation 1 has used sources like C informing the viewpoint that Hitler was the main reason for the growth in support of the Nazi Party. So I've just reiterated the viewpoint of the source of the interpretation there, but I've matched it up. Now, if you get it wrong and you don't put the correct source, it's going to be 0 on this question. But if you get it correct and you've matched it up, then you just got to develop it and make sure that you know how it supports that viewpoint. And then this last sentence is crucial, where you're just making some reference to the detail in the source. So this can be seen in the source where it makes reference to Hitler's persuasive skills and how he could help Germany to recover. You do not have to go into masses of detail here where you're referring to and quoting the source in terms of all of the detail that's included in there, the wave of enthusiasm and new hope and the dangers of communism. Don't overstate it. Keep it simple. One sentence. Use sources like, and to inform that viewpoint, and this can be seen in the source where it makes reference to. That's the best way to go about this particular response. And then I've got a contrast where I'm going to say that interpretation 2, on the other hand, may have used sources similar to B in order to arrive at the view that the depression was a more significant factor. So I've just stated the contrasting viewpoint there. So I've suggested the reason why they're different, but I'm now developing that with how. And then finally, the last part is the evidence that supports this from the source of the volume of people claiming unemployment benefits in the photograph. So that's as simple as it is, really. With that particular question. So we're banking on this being the best process to kind of go about it. It's only worth 4 marks, so it's not worth getting really hung up on. But as I said, the fact that they're saying you may use sources B and C to help you explain your answer clearly indicates that they're going to put sources in there that will correlate and link to the interpretations that are given. In which case, the best way to go about this answer is to simply just state that they differ because they may give weight to different sources. And then it's likely that interpretation 1 has used sources like, and then you've developed it, whereas on the other hand, interpretation 2 may have used sources similar to, and then you back that point up. Done with this model response here is that I've analysed the difference, I've developed it and explained it with details from the sources. Just to show you the mark scheme for this particular question then, so what we're looking for is an explanation of a reason for difference, analysing the interpretations and substantiating that effectively. And that is how you get 4 out of 4 on that question.